Welcome to tonight's meeting of the George River Council Environment and Planning meeting. I declare the meeting open at 7 p.m. Acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of all lands, waters and sky in the George River area. I pay my respect to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who live, work and meet on these lands. There are no apologies tonight. And we move to request to attend meeting via audio visual link. There have been no requests to attend via audio visual link tonight. Notice of live streaming of counts of committee meeting. Staff and public are reminded that this meeting is being recorded for minute taking purposes and is also being broadcast live to the public on Council's website in accordance with Section 5 of the Council's Code of Meeting Practice. The recording will be made available on Council's website. Code of Meeting Practice. The order of business is as shown on the agenda, which has been made available. Staff and public are reminded this meeting is open. Doors to the meeting room are to be left open unless the meeting moves into a closed confidential session, according to Section 14 of the Code of Meeting Practice. Only if the meeting moves into a closed confidential session will the public broadcasting of the meeting be suspended. Council's Code of Meeting Practice prohibits the electronic recording of meetings without the express permission of Council. Mobile phones must be turned to silent during the meeting. Disclosures of interest. I have a disclosure myself. I'm declaring a non-significant non-pecuniary interest in item ENV 04923 Significant Tree Register post-consultation for the reason that I participated in Council's nomination process through the Your Say page. I will remain in the meeting and take part in consideration and voting on this item. Do any other councils have any interest to declare?
I will make the same declaration as you, Mr. Chairperson, because I also made a nomination, so I will submit that for the staff as well. I haven't done that as yet.
Thanks, Councillor.
Non-significant, non-pecuniary.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right. We move to the public forum. There are 3 speakers registered for tonight's meeting. I would remind speakers that speakers have a 3-minute time limit. The first sound you hear indicates that you have 60 seconds remaining. At the second sound, please conclude your comments. The first speaker is Adrian Polhill, who's speaking in person on ENV 04823, George River Tree Canopy Targets for George River LGA by 2038. Go ahead, please, Mr. Polhill.
Thank you, Peter, and good evening, everybody. I'm here to congratulate Meryl and her team on a very good report. Thank you also for giving me a heads up when we met at the tree planting ceremony in Terry Street. I was looking out for the report and I'm quite impressed by it, so thank you very much. I do feel, Meryl, that there could be some improvements and yeah, you knew that was coming. So there's some. So I think that there's one thing that you could actually add is look at the carbon emissions in relation to the tree canopy cover, and every time you're reporting trees which are planted, perhaps also find out what carbon emissions they're going to draw down, so that the wider community can understand where you're heading with the tree canopy covers. Another interesting aspect that you could add is actually the cooling effect of this wonderful tree canopy cover, which is one of the key reasons why we do it. Yet there's no mention in the report of what the current temperature conditions are, or the temperatures within the LGA are, and perhaps what they could be achieved by planting the additional tree canopy cover. And also there may be a chance that you can add an annual timeline to, as you're going to reach the goal in 2038 or before, that you could say, well, we're going to achieve that by planting so many trees each year, etc., etc. I do applaud you for including the future budget And one of the items, future budget for tree planting for the next 5 years, a budget estimated at $250,000 each year. That's fantastic. However, it mentioned $250,000 for the planting of 250 trees. I do feel that there is definitely room to investigate that further and look for better value for money. I do, as you know, I do work at a nursery. I have been involved in some of the costings there, and it's certainly a lot different from that particular estimate. I want to also say that in terms of the public trees that have already been planted in the last few years, you do say that there's thousands of trees being planted in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. Could you estimate there how that's actually impacted the tree canopy cover? And I think that's all for me. Thank you very much. I don't see any time clock. Thank you very much, timer and timekeepers, but that's fantastic. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Holder. The next speaker is Matthew Allison in person on ENV 04923, Significant Tree Register, post-consultation. Please go ahead, Mr. Allison.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on Council's recently released Significant Tree Register, a significant acknowledgement of the importance of a select number of trees in our LGA. Significant also in that GRC is one of the few LGAs across New South Wales that actually has a tree register. So thank you. I welcome Council's commitment to compiling such a register, and I look forward to thoughtful suggestions from the public in the future that will be added to the register in perpetuity, well, for as long as the tree lives. Thank you to Councillor Mahoney for taking this concept up with his fellow councillors and GRC staff who are now running with it. I must admit to finding some of the nominations puzzling though, like the listing of 74 mature Canary Island date palms in Laycock Road, Penshurst. Just that these palms are prolific seeders and, you know, they pop up everywhere. So anyway, that's just a, one little aside. From my ecological background, I would like to see every remnant locally native tree on this tree register. I know that sounds ambitious, but these trees are the only living connection between us here now and what was Aboriginal land. When we acknowledge country, we're saying to the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation that as you revere the lands, water and sky as the traditional custodians, then we too pay homage and recognise the intrinsic nature of this unique country. The most effective way to pay our respects to the elders past, present and future is to protect the original trees and vegetation that make this country so unique, to future-proof the unique character of our sandstone woodlands snaking around the peninsula of the Georges River, and the turpentine and ironbark forest that once covered much of this LGA, is to recognise the native species associated with each vegetation type and to protect them as best we can. Adding these remnant trees to the tree register conveys a strong message to the public that the Council greatly values the remnant locally native trees in our area, reminiscent of our homeland, and that in doing so, Council genuinely care for country. Another anomaly, as far as I'm concerned, with some currently listed trees in the tree register is the growth of brush boxes in Anglo Square, Carlton. Brush boxes belong in northern New South Wales in wet sclerophyll forests. They're not at all happy growing in Sydney conditions. But brush boxes are still being planted with gusto by Council in our LGA when more suitable local trees like the turpentine and the ironbark are being overlooked as street and park trees. When the mighty Sydney turpentine and ironbark forest gave name to Forest Road, from Arncliffe to Lugano, it dominated the landscape. Today, only 0.5%, that's half of 1%, of this forest remains in the Sydney Basin today. And I see that not one turpentine or ironbark tree made it onto the Significant Tree Register, when I know that many were nominated. In fact, off with bush care, tend the remnant turpentine forest in Buria Reserve near Oatley Station. Buru is an Indigenous name for the turpentine tree. This reserve was nominated but failed to make the cut.
That's 3 minutes, Mr. Chair.
What's going on there exactly? Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Mr. Allison. The next speaker is Mr. Jeff Innes in person on, again, ENV 04923 Significant Tree Register post consultation. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the June Council meeting, I made a presentation on behalf of Oatley Flora and Fauna and queried the drivers and vision that the Council had for a significant tree register. At the time, it was suggested that a holistic tree asset management system could bring greater benefits rather than relying on a select few cherry-picked examples from a STR. At a subsequent meeting with Council members, 2 factors emerged. One, that the Council's tree management policy made reference to an STR and it would be required to strengthen the policy. And 2, that the Council already had implemented a tree asset management system that included over 32,000 trees maintained in the tree plotter database. This was all good news. In the meantime, the call by GRC for public nominations to the STR, many residents got on board with a genuine belief that trees that were known to them were justified for inclusion based on the objective criteria that had been established. Over 60 days of the public consultation, 253 nominations were submitted. However, the post-consultation report has shown that only 2.5% of the nominations were accepted. This represents 16 sites, including 257 individual trees derived from 10 species. Of these, 6 species are locally native to the LGA, that's 176 trees. 2 are Australian natives but not local, it's 5 trees, and 2 are exotics, 75 trees. As for the 97.5% of rejected nominations, it would appear, it would appear that subjective analysis was performed, often showing conflicting reasons for their rejection. Many of the reasons given include, but are not limited to, not in a prominent location, commonly planted throughout the LGA, similar to others in the area. Tree was not present in the location in the 1943 air photo. A large number of rejected species included turpentine, melaleuca, tallowood, syzygium, as well as other eucalypts and angophores. Having an objective set of criteria and applying a subjective analysis does not engender a rigorous process. It is difficult to comprehend that in an LGA that is one of the bushiest in Sydney and prides itself on a rich diversity, that in a suburb such as Oatley, the only tree of significance is an exotic pine. Many local residents will see this as an embarrassment. Notwithstanding my comments, I welcome all trees that are included into the SDR. However, if the SDR is to help support the GRC's tree management policy, one would think that the more candidates on the register would carry more weight.
3 minutes, Mr. Chair.
At this stage, it would seem that my early prediction of only cherry-picked examples has come to fruition. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Innes. Yeah, I might ask all the speakers if you could maybe forward me a summary of your comments and we'll take it up, discuss with the staff and give you some feedback. So thanks for all that. We now move to confirmation minutes of previous meeting. ENV 04623, confirmation of minutes of the Environment and Planning Committee meeting held on 20th November 2023. Could I call for a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Lansbury, seconded by Councillor Wang. All those in favour, say aye. Anyone against? Declare that carried. The next item is committee report, ENV 04723, review of Georges River Stormwater Management Manual, outcome of public consultation. Can I call for a mover and seconder? Councillor Lansbury and Councillor Catras.
I'm going to move an amendment to, so.
Okay,
I don't know who, I'm not sure who was first, but anyway. The amendment, it's a simple amendment. Council congratulates and expresses its appreciation to the staff members that were involved in the preparation of such a detailed and comprehensive document. I'd like to talk to that if you don't mind through the chair, but Councillor Lansbury, I think, moved it. It's very simple. I've read through the whole thing, and I did speak to Liam earlier on with the queries that I've had. Every query was answered adequately. And can I say it's probably, in my 45 years of being an architect, it's probably the best, and I mean that, the best stormwater policy I've come across. It's detailed, it's comprehensive, it provides options, it provides a combination of options if you want to have that combination with regards to stormwater. Sorry, I just get rid of the consultants.
And then I'll bring it back to you.
Yeah.
Sorry, we've got
Yeah, and I've got to say that it provides a combination of options. So in stormwater, you just don't have one option. You can have a combination of possibilities that you can adopt in a development. And I tried to find an area that you haven't covered, and I congratulate you, Liam, the director, Meryl, and your team who put it together. It's a great document. It would be what I would call the Stormwater Engineer's Bible, and I commend it to anyone that wants to read it. Thank you.
thanks, Councillor Katras. Before we move to any further discussion, I'll get sorry, Mr. Liam Frame, the Managing Development Building, to give us a bit of a summary. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll basically go through the background of this document very quickly so everyone understands where we're up to and what we've gone through. So the original policy was adopted in 2020, and that policy was prepared with council and with external consultants, and part of the adoption of that involved it being reviewed and road tested after it had a bit of a run out there to see how it went. And effectively we started that review process middle of last year, and ultimately that resulted in the report originally being reported to Environment and Planning Committee with a recommendation that it go for public consultation. Essentially, this went out on public consultation. We received 15 submissions, and I think it's important to note that they were good, detailed submissions, and many of them, particularly from industry, were very helpful. Our consultation involved both liaising directly with industry engineers, along with working public advertisement and also on council's website to make sure that we got coverage and submissions. Ultimately, we've reviewed those changes, those ones that we could accommodate or that we recognised as having value, we incorporated, and those that didn't necessarily, we've responded to within the report in detail. Essentially, most of the changes in this compared to the previous one that went before the committee are quite minor. One key change relates to a new clause 3.7, which provides exceptions for minor work. For example, someone putting in a minor deck or a minor portion on the back of their property. The reason that was adopted is, first of all, from feedback from the previous committee, but also from the public submissions. A theme that came through is people with difficult drainage sites not having any ability to develop without completely redeveloping their property or getting a stormwater easement. So this provides, in certain circumstances, an ability for people to not necessarily have to go the whole way as long as they're doing very minor, very low impact development. And we felt that was important based on both our experience in practice and also based upon the feedback from the community. But essentially, that's probably the main change. There's a number of small changes in there which you can read at length if you care to, but it does go on for quite a lot of detail. But fundamentally, this is put forward therefore for consideration and adoption following that process. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Frame. So we've got a recommendation, and it's been suggested amendment by Councillor Katras. Does the mover, Councillor Lansbury, agree with that? Have any comments? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just make a couple of comments if I can, Mr.
Sure.
Chair. Just to follow up on your report, Mr. Frame, thank you to you and your staff. It's a very technical report and you guys are the experts on this. I will admit to having one or two double shot coffees to get me through it. There's a lot of detail in there that we're very grateful with your expertise that you can find your way around it. And I do appreciate the fact that with the submissions we're definitely taking into consideration and the amendments that were recommended by a number of them with updating policies, etc., were certainly included. So well done to all.
Thanks, Councillor Lansbury. Do any other councillors have any further comments to make? Okay, in that case, then I'll put the motion. This is a planning matter, so you can go around the room, please. Mr. Fornick.
Sure. I'll start with your vote, Mr. Chair. For. Councillor Borg. For. Councillor Amp Abraham.
For.
Councillor Jamieson.
For.
Councillor Catras. For. Councillor Lansbury.
For.
And Councillor Wayne.
For.
7 votes for.
I declare that motion carried. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is ENV 04823, George River tree canopy targets for George River LGA by 2038. And before we, could I firstly call for a mover and seconder?
I'll move.
It's Councillor Catras and seconded by Councillor Jamieson. Before we move to any discussion, I'd invite Mr. Spooner, Manager, Environment, Health and Regulatory Services, to give us an overview, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report responds to a nomination that the Council made back on the 27th of February for an update on the progress to the tree canopy targets, which was previously moved by Council back in 2019. The request related to 3 key areas. The first was to write to the relevant minister requesting a review of penalties for illegal works or vandalism to trees, suggesting that they should be increased, but also looking at a tiered approach or a hierarchical approach to trees on land that, due to their zoning or their land use type or their location, such as wetlands or riparian zones or foreshore scenic protection areas, that they may be looked at in a different way. Perhaps they should be tiered in a greater sense than a standard tree in a less significant or sensitive zone or location. I know, Mr. Chair, you're very keen to hear about how that's progressed. We wrote to the Minister. We've had a response back from the Department of Planning. And today, the Director and myself met with 3 staff from the Department of Planning Policy Unit, and we put those issues to them. They were very supportive of our suggestions. They indicated that they are working with a number of other councils who have raised similar issues, so it's not just Georges River Council. There appears to be a groundswell of concern about trees in the community and I guess the impact of illegal removal has on particularly significant trees. We've undertaken to come back to those policy staff in the department with a submission detailing in much more detail the intention behind that motion from council and seeking their support. So that will be done early in the new year, and we're looking forward to, I guess, hopefully some positive feedback to go through the process to make some amendments to legislation to move some changes in those penalties for illegal works on trees of significant value. The second part of that motion was to develop an education campaign which we can release to the public and talk about the importance of trees. And I guess some of the issues that were raised by Adrian in his discussion can be incorporated into that education program, which we were going to incorporate into the responses from the Minister, but that's been delayed a little bit, so we'll run that as a separate program, and that will happen in early 2024. The draft has been developed, but we'll be out and about in the new year with an education program to address many of those things. The third component of that recommendation related to 9 I guess, practical applications in relation to the, I guess, operational issues and how we can better achieve our tree canopy target. A number of those we currently do, such as cross-checking the arborist reports that are submitted. Also making sure that any report we receive talks about the health of the tree. That's already been as part of standard practice and standard operations. There are some things that we can do partly, or such as we can withhold occupation certificates if we are the principal certifying authority, but if we're not, that's a matter for the private certifier. We can't prevent the permission of an occupation certificate, but we can take regulatory action where there are breaches of conditions of consent or approved plan. So there's options there, which we can do things. We do notify about removal of street trees where it's not an emergency. And I think a number of these provisions have also been caught up with the tree management policy. And this was I guess, a recommendation back in February, and since then there's been a lot of work done in relation to the tree management policy, which I guess in some ways addresses a number of these issues. We've also had a look at the Sutherland Council policy, and we had our legal counsel review that and gave us some recommendations on some of the aspects of that policy, which probably weren't, perhaps lawful is a strong word, but probably not kosher. So as a result of that, we'll be looking at any amendments in relation to offset fees being part of an amendment to our contributions policy, which is required to do prior to us taking contributions or offset fees. So that's something we can work on. The four key issues that were discussed in that recommendation will require additional funding, and that's, I guess, the unfortunate reality is that council's operational budget doesn't account for a lot of the things that we would like to do in relation to trees, such as the enhancement of planting of trees. And I'll talk about Adrian's comments in a minute, but we need funding to do that acceleration project, and that will move into the recommendations. We also need some funding to do a comprehensive audit of all applications that are issued requiring replacement trees. We do random audits on those, but we don't do a comprehensive review of those. And that, I think, in order to maintain or enhance our canopy targets, we need to work on that. But that again needs to be funded. We also would like to, do more handouts for planting for ceremonial occasions, and that also needs to be funded, as does updates to our website in relation to listing all the trees applications that have been processed and approved. So all very good suggestions and all very desirable to have to enhance our canopy to meet our target by 2038, but they will need separate funding allocations through budget bid programs. So that moves us to the recommendations. And while we now have data from the Department of Planning about tree canopy and how that's progressing, and unfortunately there's been a decline since our initial data was done in 2018, noting that there is a caveat on that data that was provided from the Department of Planning about accuracy, and also noting that we have planted thousands of trees, but it will take time for that canopy to advance, and it may be a delayed impact in relation to increasing that current canopy target, but we're working towards that. We're also looking for some endorsement from council for some additional budget bids when they come through in relation to additional tree plantings, in relation to giveaways, and in relation to auditing of applications to ensure that replacement trees have actually been planted on those sites. And we would like to do a progress report every 2 years, so we're not waiting that long, because if we find that the trend is such that the tree canopy is reducing, not increasing, we can then look at that as a critical decision to be made to advance that and put resources towards that. Just thank you, Adrian, for your presentation, and I appreciate your congratulations and positive comments to the staff. That's always welcome. Thank you. And look, always appreciate your improvements. And I'd like to talk to you about your carbon emissions for different types of tree. I think you talked about that previously, and I'd love to see some scientific papers that list which trees are beneficial or more beneficial to plant than others. So perhaps we can talk more about that separately. Yes, we're fully aware of the cooling effect of trees on the ambient temperatures, but unfortunately that wasn't part of the recommendation. So we are working in relation to urban heat island effect in other sustainability initiatives. So I appreciate that. You talk about your annual timeline. I agree with that. What we're suggesting, we do it every 2 years to see how things go. We report back to council every 2 years. You talked about the $250,000 budget to replace trees or plant trees. Look, happy to talk to you more about that, but that figure is to procure, to plant, to maintain that tree until it is at a stage and an age where it can sustain itself. So I guess we can talk more about interpretations of those costs, but that's where that cost come from. We can talk more about that. And in relation to the estimate of how much public trees have impacted the target, I guess that will only be over time and with analysis of that data we've received from the Department of Planning. And hopefully by doing that, we'll be able to better understand the tree planted today might take 5, 6, 10, 20 years before it has an impact on that target. And as a result of that, we can work out how many trees that we need to plant in order to meet the 2030 target. So appreciate those comments and happy to discuss further and get some further suggestions on how we can work together to get that to work. So I really appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Spooner. Look, I just had one question on that, if you don't mind. It's really encouraging that the Department of Planning has come forward and talked about possibility of increasing fines for different offences regarding trees. I was just wanting to know if there's been any indication from the Minister as to when Council can meet with him.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this stage, there's been no indication from the Minister. We will advance that question when we next meet with our colleagues from the Department of Planning.
Thanks for that. Councillor Catrus says, move. Do you have any comments or questions?
Quick comment through the chair. Look, I really, I suppose, appreciate all that was said by Andrew Spooner, the manager, and I do appreciate the staff getting into this and really, obviously they've been taking it seriously for a long, long time. I appreciate the addresses from the community. I really think that Andrew Polhill, Adrian, thank you for that. Adrian Polhill touched on something which is very, very important. That is that every tree and every part of a tree, branches, root system, they all contain carbon, and through photosynthesis that improves our health with the production of oxygen, etc. We all know about that, but I like the way you addressed it, Andrew, and that's the fact that to actually get some scientific knowledge with regards to what trees would be the best ones to plant with regards to the carbon. If you actually look, if you go up to the Jubilee Stadium and you go right up the top there and you look way out, it's actually a sea of green. And that's one thing we've got to be proud of in our local government area. It is a sea of green. Maybe some of the other areas are a sea of concrete and red roofs, but from that angle, it's great. I do have one question through the chair. I read somewhere that mangrove wetlands, are they included in this? Because I believe that if you add them, not that I want to increase the amount of canopy that we've got because we've got mangrove wetlands, but I'm quite happy to get that if we can include that figure, and by 2036 we can turn around and say we've got 50% or 60%. So what's the deal with the mangrove wetlands?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Catrus, for bringing up the elephant in the room. When we first presented figures on canopy cover, Council did include figures in relation to mangroves. our friends in the back row were very unhappy about that and said that wasn't a true indication because it included vegetation that was within or below the high mean watermark, so therefore it's not relevant to terrestrial trees. I believe, and I'm happy to be corrected by Elise, but the figures we've presented do not include mangroves in this report. The previous report did, and I guess I'd have to take on notice that the comments and concerns from the community about including mangroves into that figure, because if there is a concern, it would be far better for the organisation to achieve that 40% target without including mangroves.
No, it's
18.
no, through the chair. The only reason why I mention this is because I've read somewhere in the 2018 mapping that at the present moment we're probably, in 2018 we're talking about maybe 23% without the mangrove wetlands, but possibly up to 35 or 38% with the mangroves. But I can understand the logic and the rationale keeping the mangroves out because they're actually low-lying, I don't know, swamp trees. So, okay, well, fair enough. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Councillor Katras. Councillor Jamieson, you were the seconder. Do you have any questions or comments? Okay, any other councillors?
Just
Councillor Borg.
just wanted to clarify that. So when we go to the next budget, you'll be seeking 3 separate budget bits for the increase in tree canopy, the 250 for the supply of trees and maintaining and planting them, 50 for compliance inspections for developments, is that right? And 10 for tree giveaways. Just wanted to check I've got that.
Through the chair, yes. The figures within that ballpark for each of those three. Well, obviously these are estimates at this stage. They'll be far more than estimates when we do our budget bids, but it'll be within that scope of that ballpark figure. Yes, thank you.
Councillor Lansbury.
Just have a question, Mr. Spinner. In relation to the canopy coverage, which pretty much has, according, I know it's with a caveat that it's not an exact science, were you guys surprised that it hasn't increased?
Through the chair, yes. Was very surprised considering the amount of tree planting work that has been done, and particularly the corridor plantings where we've planted over 1,000, more than 1,000 trees, and had significant government funding to do corridor planting programs. So yes, and I suggest that would be, I guess, it's that delay factor in how long does it take a tree, but you know, it may be a decent size. It might be a 45 litre tree that goes in, but it may take significant time for that tree to enhance the canopy to be picked up by the I guess the aerial imagery to make that assessment. So look, I guess we're learning as we go, and yeah, but I was surprised that was that actually had declined. Yes.
So was I. Just another follow-up, well, more of a comment than anything else. I love the idea in here about giveaways for memorials or for newborns, because there's that urban myth from many years ago is why Sydney is covered in jacaranda trees is when babies were born, that people were given a jacaranda tree. As pretty as they are, they're a bit of a menace, I guess that, but I think that would be a wonderful thing. And also, I don't know if this has ever been considered before, but I'm pretty sure Bayside Council at one stage was giving away a small tree in citizenship ceremonies. And obviously that would increase the cost, but I would be very supportive of that. You know, the whole thing of putting down roots and all the rest of it, whether it was even a packet of seeds or something, but that could be something for consideration as well, but wholeheartedly support the giveaways.
Yeah, through the chair, we're happy to look at that suggestion. I guess the issue is that we've got to have the right trees, and whether that's, if we're talking about carbon sequestration or we're talking about location of trees in properties, that's going to be the significant things. We don't want to plant trees that later have to come out at a later date because they've been planted in the wrong location. But look, happy to include that, and I think that's a good suggestion that, yeah, you're right. It's a new beginning in a new local government area. Here's a new tree that's suitable for planting within our soil types and our climate. So yeah, we'll definitely look at that as part of that budget bid process. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Spooner. Are there any other questions or comments from the councillors? Councillor Wang.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. So my question is, when we set up this policy, did we just learn from other councils tree registry policy? Because I found the city of Sydney, they have a similar policy. Yeah.
Councillor Wang, are you on the tree canopy targets or the certificate tree register?
Tree register. Tree
Oh,
register.
that's the next one.
Oh.
That's the next item.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
You got a question on the canopy targets?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Thanks. Anybody else? Okay. In that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, say aye. Anybody against? Okay. Declare that carried. Thank you. The next item is ENV 04923, Certificate Tree Register post consultation. Could I call for a movement and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Lansbury, seconded by Councillor Wang, I think. Councillor Lansbury, Councillor Wang. Okay, before we move to any discussion, I'd like to ask Ms. Ballasty, who is the Manager of Environmental Health and Regulatory Services, to give us an overview. Thank you.
Through the chair, I'll just correct you there, Peter. Sorry, Coordinator of Environmental Sustainability and Waste. Sorry. So by way of background, in May 2023, Council resolved to consider the definition of a significant tree and the criteria of a significant tree. The 4 categories that Council resolved would be used in the definition of a significant tree were visual aesthetic significance, botanic scientific significance, ecological significance, and fourthly, historical, commemorative, cultural or social significance. The report that you've considered tonight provides Council with an update on the 60-day significant tree community consultation period, which was held between the 24th of May to the 24th of July 2023. During the consultation, a total of 268 tree nominations were received. I will just note that in each nomination, for each of those 263 nominations, often there were numerous trees per nomination received. Firstly, a quality review was performed by a senior council staff member to confirm the nominations that were received were complete, that they were in accordance with the guidelines stipulated in the report considered by council in May, and that also any nominations for trees on private land were made by the authorised landowner. Of the 268 nominations received, 11 were declared to be ineligible because they hadn't met those criteria. This review process was performed in accordance with the report, which was last considered by council in May. A total of the 257 nominations, which were those eligible nominations, they included trees at 16 locations. This list was provided to an independent qualified consultant with significant industry experience to review the applications against the established criteria. This review is in line with industry best practice and enabled review of tree nominations in line with the significant tree register report last considered by council in May. All consulting staff were independent, they were AQ F5 qualified, and every nomination was reviewed by a senior arborist. Desktop assessment utilised data from council's tree asset database, which has recorded the attributes of trees of over 36,000 trees across the LGA. And the information in council's database was used to support the tree nominations received by community members during the consultation period. A total of 21 visual tree assessments were undertaken to corroborate the information received in the digital nominations, and that were with trees assessed via desktop means first. Overall, the report recommends the further nomination of trees at any time by the community through a form which will be established and provided on Council's website. The report also recommends a review of the list of significant trees every 5 years or after more than 5 nominations are received, pending available budget. Overall, the report recommends that 257 trees at 16 locations be listed on the Significant Tree Register and be published on Council's website. It also recommends that significant trees will be managed in accordance with the draft tree management policy that Council considered last month. Further, the report also outlines some controls used by Council in succession tree planting, the report recommends that they be undertaken in accordance with Council's Street Tree Master Plan, the tree management policy, and also Council's tree planting specifications, which allow for the selection of a suitable tree species to be planted at a suitable location within the LGA, with available funding from the tree maintenance budget. In addressing some of the comments from the speakers tonight, thank you to Matthew, who's outlined that Georges Strait Council is in fact one of the first local government areas to proceed with implementing a significant tree register. As for your comments regarding the 2 specific trees that we are recommending be included on the significant tree register, they were the palms at Laycock Street and the brush box in Anglo Square. Both those nominations have been recommended by the independent consultants based on visual significance, so not ecological significance. The visual significance criteria is one that was established by Council in its May report. And in addressing the comments by Jeff, your comments were around the criteria. So that, as I've mentioned, the 4 criteria have been resolved by Council earlier this year in a report in May. You did note the tree asset management system, so the data that Council has captured for its tree assets was used as a reference point in the assessment of all the tree nominations that were received as part of the consultation period. As for, I'm sorry, I didn't quite, the individual tree nominations that you did refer to, so individual nominations have been reviewed in accordance with the definition of the significant tree, which Council endorsed in May, and has also been assessed based on the significant tree criteria, which again was resolved by Council in May of this year. You did give some comments also around exotics and natives. So just to let you know there that there are a number of criteria that trees are assessed under, and ecological value is just one. And just in wrapping up, addressing your comments around tree mapping as well. So trees that we are recommending be included on the significant tree register will also be mapped in Council's data management and asset management platform, and as well as being published on Council's website. And Councillor Wang, as for your question earlier around the policy, yes, Council has considered the work done by City of Sydney in preparing its significant tree register. City of Sydney is one of the councils that has just beaten us. No worries.
Yeah, sure. Ms. Bishop's going to address the meeting now. Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Chair, probably this comment is in relation to the rather scathing comments that were made by Mr. Innes about our approach and your term objective criteria applied subjectively. And you mentioned a number of issues that we hadn't listed, various trees that may be native to the area. I would invite you to lodge a submission to me. And in that submission, I'd like you to outline the trees that have been nominated, the trees that were submitted, that you would like to be reviewed. I can't guarantee that if there is a budget requirement to do this, because we do need to go back to the same arborist or get someone independent to review it. But I would, I take such comments quite seriously. It's a process that has been endorsed by council. So when a member of the community is quite scathing about our approach, I will give you the opportunity to put that in writing to me, and I will then look at it carefully.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Bishop. I'm sure we can work something out there with looking at those trees. If Mr. Innes wants to come forward and give us some more information. Councillor Lansbury, as mover, would you like to make any comments or ask some questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I did want to just make a couple of comments. I think, Mr. Chair, this was originally your idea, wasn't it? The significant tree register.
It wasn't actually. It came up to council a few years ago, and a lot of people think it was my doing, but it was Councillor Borg who pushed for it in the budget, I think, last year. So credit to Councillor Borg.
I think it might have actually been Councillor Payer previously.
Okay, yeah.
2018
it was
maybe?
too, that's right. But somebody pushed it at this term of council. I thought it might have been you, but it was both of you. No, well done. It was a good thing. Just the comments that were made by Mr. Allison, who is a tree expert. I was interested when you mentioned about Laycock Street and Anglo Square. I thought in my very basic level of aesthetic understanding, I thought it might have been because it was like an avenue down Laycock and Anglo Square being the park, which is quite visually attractive. I understand your concern about the species not being especially native to here, but thanks for the comments that sort of confirmed that that was the case. I'm inclined to agree a bit, Ms. Bishop, with what Mr. Ennis said. I was actually quite concerned when I did read the report that it was just rejection after rejection after rejection, and I just my feeling was that it might not be that encouraging for people to nominate trees next time if maybe the bar is a bit high. And obviously they're not all going to be magnificent trees like the one down in Water Street at San Susie, but some of them may have the comments that were made by whoever they were that nominated them found them, it was a fabulous tree, it was this, it was that, and I just wondered if maybe the bar is a little bit too high. But that's something that we can revisit perhaps down the track. It just seemed to me the figures that Mr. Ennis mentioned of 97.5 were rejected. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it did seem to be, from my, as I said, I'm no gardener, don't know my trees very well, but I know what I like. They did seem to be a lot of rejections and not much included. So,
can I just comment there? I think if all councillors attached to this report is every tree that was looked at. So I'd probably, as I say, I'm very happy to review trees that the members of the public all feel that could be relooked at. But to be fair to the consultant and the staff, every tree has been looked at and assessed, as you see at the back here. So there's some clear reasonings why trees are in and why trees are out, and they're based on the methodology. I mean, we talk about the fact that we need to make decisions that are consistent, based on evidence, and to our best ability, so we are consistent in how we do it. So, I take your point, and I also take the points of the members of the public, but we do try to make sure that we have some methodology behind it. So, but look, I'm more than happy if anyone in this room wants to put forward trees that you'd like to have a look at. But first, I suggest is have a look at this very lengthy appendix that goes through every tree. And if you feel there's some in there that we can revisit, more than happy to do so. But I take your comments, Councillor Lansbury.
Thanks, Ms. Bishop. Councillor Wang is second. Do you have any further questions or comments? Any other councillors have any questions or comments? In that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Declare that carried. There being no other business on the agenda, I declare this meeting closed at 7:55 p.m. Thanks, everybody.